You get a lot of good information, but you get what? An equal amount of bad information or misinformation. So you have to be very diligent today to what you read and what you hear. Even what you hear coming out of somebody's mouth, is it true? Our president stood up and said a number of things. It's been recorded. But is it the truth? You know, he doesn't have the guts to really explain what they did. You be the judge. At this time, it's my great opportunity to introduce to you our executive director, who is not only the backbone of this organization, but also at the state level. She has a lot of, I won't say influence, but she has a lot of input, I know. And let's welcome her with a great grassroots America, We the People, JoAnn Fleming.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, everybody. Well, I've been all over the map, I tell you. I want to thank the folks. There were just a handful of folks who realized that last week we lost my father-in-law when I was in Odessa. So I got to drive from Odessa to Tyler and stopped long enough to get my husband in the pickup truck, and then we drove another 6.5 hours. So that day, last Friday, I was trapped inside of a pickup for 14 hours. I have to tell you, that was kind of hard. But anyway, thank you all so much for being here today and for everything that you do. Before we get started, because I don't want to forget this, can you hear me?
No.
You lost me?
Yep.
You can't have that. It's not, it's dead. Okay, now it's back. It's green again.
Still
Now
not.
it's red.
It's dying.
Somebody help. Anyway, candidates that are here, you can. Do we have a third?
I'm gonna get one.
Yeah, bring the candidates. This one is just, it's low battery.
It says 6 hours.
Oh, that'll work. 6 hours.
That's, you need the name. Oh, it's Marcy. It's labeled Marcy.
Okay, if you would get another mic, Jack, thank you so much. And if the candidates that are here, I'd like to be able to identify you or let you identify yourself. Today's not a day for you to give a speech, but it is good for you to come up and identify yourself. We appreciate your being here today, and tell us the office that you're running for. Okay, so everybody get up. Get in line. Let's move it.
It's labeled Kathy.
I don't need a mic.
Here you go.
You're on.
Okay. I really didn't need a mic. I'm John Furlow, and I'm running for Smith County Judge in the primary in March of 14. Appreciate your vote.
I'm Karen Phillips, the current Smith County Clerk, and I would appreciate you voting for me. I do have some papers today to get my name back on the ballot, and if I could get your signature, it'll save me $1,200.
My name is Austin Reeve Jackson, and I am a board-certified lawyer in criminal law and criminal appellate law running for the office of District Attorney here in Smith County to restore traditional faith-based American values to that office.
My name is Brent Radican. I'm currently a city councilman for the city of Bullard. I'm a local attorney here, specializing in family law and criminal law, and I'm running for county court at law. Judge Dunn is retiring, and we need somebody with the fundamentals that he had, as well as what this group represents. And I believe I'm the best qualified for that.
I'm Carol Clark, and I'm judge of the 321st District Court. It's our family court here in Smith County. I've been on that bench for 15 years. I do 50% of all the family law. I do 80% of the Attorney General child support collection, and I do 100% of the children in foster care CPS. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jason Ellis, and I'm running for judge of the county court at law. I'm running for that office because I think it's time we run that court like a business and get the docket moving again. It's one of the poorest functioning courts in our courthouse, and I'd like to take care of that. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any candidates, any representatives of any candidates here that were not here represented? Okay, thank you. Okay, I want to tell you all something that I've been involved this week, and that is an effort to get David Barton on the ballot for United States Senate. Now, for those of you who've already met some of the candidates that have already said they're going to run, I appreciate that. I've met some of them. One of them I'm pretty impressed with. My goal is to make sure that we get John Cornyn into a runoff. Do you understand that? History proves that in Texas, if we can get an incumbent that is in a bit of trouble, in a runoff, then guess what? We win. So that's what we want to do. And so we are working on getting David Barton. In fact, Freedom Works is coming to Texas next week. We were on the phone with them. You know, they are one of the groups, the early groups that supported Ted Cruz. And so we're going to try to get the Senate Conservatives Fund, the Madison Project, Freedom Works, and let's see who else, Club for Growth. We're going after those. We're going to see if we can get those to get, to get focused on this U.S. Senate race. So that is our goal. And so we're trying to convince David that he needs to get in the race. So I think Becky, our sweet Becky, has been under the weather. I sent her an email blast last night that gives you a site, a Facebook site, that you can sign up to encourage David Barton to get in the race. I think Becky hasn't sent that out yet because she's not feeling well at all, and I would ask you all to please pray for Becky. But we also, for those of you like me who don't trust Facebook, don't like Facebook, and don't have time for it, somebody is working on a website where you can sign up on a website. So we're working on that too. So I just want to let you all know that yes, it is true, and somebody sent me a card that said, congratulations for being quoted on the Blaze. I didn't hear that this morning. There's so much going on in my house. I know that I've been interviewed by the Politico, I think it was yesterday, about it, and also National Review Online. So, I try to answer those phone calls. Now, before I get into the presentation, I want to remind you that today is the last day to early vote in the state constitutional amendments that have been proposed. All that information is on the website. I would urge you to please vote. Now I'm going to read something from a friend of mine in Gregg County. And I'm going to tell you that as mad as I get at the Republican Party, and I stay pretty mad at the upper echelons of it, a lot, because they want to compromise way too much on things that we need to be fighting for. And I don't like the way some of them have trashed Ted Cruz. So I'm going to read to you something real quickly that came in yesterday, and I intend to post it on our website. And this is from our friend next door in Gregg County. He is the GOP party chair of Gregg County, and it's Dr. Keith Rothra. And the title of this is called Responding to Karl Rove's Lies. He says, I am watching people that I have long held in high esteem doing damage to the political party they served for years. Seeing Karl Rove strike out against the Tea Party gives me great pain. He is cutting the throat of the very people who have the capacity to bring the victory that the GOP claims it seeks. Rove thinks the Tea Party is a crazed group of Bible-thumping, gun-slinging, radical hillbillies who have no concept of American values. To him, the Tea Party is a band of extremists who are out of touch with the mainstream GOP. Nothing could be further from the truth. First, the Tea Party is not an organization. It is a political movement. Very few Tea Party groups have a formal organization, and most cannot formally endorse a political candidate or platform because they are not registered as a lobbying group or as an official political action committee. So what is the Tea Party? He says, I organized the first Tea Party rally in East Texas on Tax Day, April the 15th in 2009. It was on the Gregg County Courthouse lawn and with speakers on the courthouse steps. The speakers were elected officials and the attendees were residents from 9 East Texas counties who were distressed over the plans being put into effect by the Obama administration. What do these people believe? Most are pro-life. That means they are in line with the GOP platform. They are opposed to the current tax rate. T stands for taxed enough already. Straight out of the GOP platform. They oppose government-run health care. Again, in agreement with the GOP. They support business and oppose laws that are contrary to the success of good business. This is a GOP platform concept. The Tea Party wants small government with the lowest possible level of government attending to those areas where government is absolutely necessary. Another GOP platform concept. On issue after issue, the Tea Party is not extreme, but it is mainstream GOP, in league with the GOP platform in point after point. This being the case, what is Karl Rove's problem with the Tea Party? Might it be that someone other than Karl Rove and his minions could actually attain control of the GOP and bring in leaders who will actually end deficit spending, excessive taxes, oppressive laws, and unconstitutional policies? Rove and friends are defending their turf, but the turf is not theirs to defend. They fear a conservative trend in the GOP, just as did Rockefeller, Scranton, and others in the days of Goldwater. Scranton and Rockefeller were never elected president. It was only when the Reagan administration prevailed against them that the GOP reached its greatest restoration of American freedoms. When was the last time the people actually had a voice in government? Is it not time for the GOP to turn leadership back to the rank and file, even if Karl Rove might lose his seat of power? And I'm going to tell you, we're going to try to take it right out of his hands. Okay, I'm going to tell you that on the local level, we're about to have a big public argument. So, when you see it, the match lit next week, you'll understand that it is after we have done everything we could to try to convince people to do the right thing without taking a wrong turn. And I'm talking about county roads, and I'm talking about a fight we're fixing to have with some in the Commissioner's Court. And it's going to be a public fight. Because I'm going to tell you something. When people have figured out that they don't need to have a plan because they think they don't have enough money, it sounds like Washington, D.C. to me. And I'm going to tell you, it reminds me of some of the nonsense I hear in Austin. And if there's ever a place that we need to have sanity and common sense in government, it is at the local level. So I'm going to tell you, next week, it looks like they're going to vote to hold a public hearing on the tax reinvestment zone, transportation reinvestment zone, where there's an opportunity to skim off local property taxes and sales taxes to send to the state to finish Toll 49. Now, I'm going to tell you, if you go out there and you look in the parking lot right out here, there's a white F-150 Lariat pickup truck. It's got a toll tag on it. That's mine. And I use that toll tag. And I support toll roads if they're done right. And I drive them because you know what? I need to be everywhere I need to be fast. And I need to be there with as fast as possible without having to stop every 2 seconds. So that's why I use toll roads. But I'm going to tell you what I'm not okay with. I am not okay with the people who live in rural parts of this county waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for the day when somebody is going to make county roads a priority in this county. I am just fed up with it. So now, I'm just telling you, it's coming. Now, I've been before the Commissioner's Court, I don't know how many times talking about this. We have talked about the need for a long-range plan for 5 years. There is not one. So I'm going to ask you, are you okay with the county giving your property taxes to the state? When I'm through with this presentation today, you're going to know why the state of Texas does not need your local property taxes for transportation. You'll be crystal clear on that, okay? But before you even see it, how many people in here want your property taxes to go to the state? How many? Any takers? All right. Now, the name of this presentation, and Clint, you can go ahead and bring it up. Somebody, anybody? It is called Texafornia, Closer Than You Think. And the reason that I have that kind of title on this is because we have been sold what I call the Texas fairy tale. You know, we've got a lot of elected officials who run around going, you know what, Washington, you need to look up there. Don't look here in Austin, look in Washington, because that's where all the problems are. Everything's fine, move along, there's nothing to see here. In fact, a lot of the folks that are running for statewide office, you would think they were running against Barack Obama. Because with all of the issues we have in the state that we need to address, instead of them addressing the issues and providing solutions as to how they're going to solve some of the problems, they keep telling us that Washington is dysfunctional. Washington is broken. Washington spends too much, regulates too much, lies too much. You know what? We get that, don't we? We already get that, and we've gotten that for a long time. So what I'm doing on the Life, Liberty, and Property Tour with some of the other statewide leaders is we are focusing on the missed opportunities, the squandered opportunities that we've had in Austin for at least the last 2 sessions. So I'm going to hit the high points of those with you today. And all of this is sourced. None of it is something that I just dreamed up because I didn't have anything else to do. Now I'm going to remind you that in the primary of 2012, the people of Texas who voted in the primary, 94% of Texas voters want spending limits on government, 94%. I can tell you that Austin, most of Austin, is completely tone deaf on that matter. But the good news is some of the biggest spenders, like Senator Tommy Williams, who was chair of the Senate Finance Committee, is leaving. He resigned. There will be a special election. So one of the big Republican spenders is leaving. Jim Pitts, who was chair of the House Appropriations Committee, is also retiring. He's not coming back. So I will tell you that some of them who just don't have what it takes for a big primary fight, they know that they're about to be challenged, and we've got a lot of good challengers on the ground that are running for office right now. We have an opportunity to gain another, I would say another 20 or 30 seats. We need to do that because, as I've told you all before, of the 95 seats that Republicans have in the House, about 20 to 25 of them you can count on to consistently vote for smaller government, okay? That's not nearly enough. So, what is all of this hoopla talking about what goes on in state government? When we've already got so many problems in Washington, why am I spending my time talking about state government? Because of the rise of the Texas Liberty Movement over the last 2 sessions. If there's anything that the liberty groups in Texas, whether they're called Tea Party groups or 912s or some of the libertarians, doesn't matter what they're called, here's what they are focused on that unites them. They want to make Texas strong. That's our common goal. We want to make sure that her character, her integrity, and pro-liberty governance can lead a troubled nation looking for answers. So how do we do that? To make Texas strong, we need to reduce our dependence on federal dollars. We need to resist any increase in state debt. We need to get our state's fiscal house in order. We need to uphold the rule of law at all times. We need to reduce regulation. We need to set much higher standards in ethics and transparency. And by the way, the ethics and transparency I'm talking about here is the ethics and transparency for elected officials. Do you know that our state officials do not have to disclose nearly as much as the people who run for Congress do? They can actually hide the fact that they have income streams that are related to the committees that they chair. We need to make sure that we pass some legislation that requires our state officials, whether they be a House member, a Senate member, or a statewide official, that they must disclose where their income comes from, so that we know whether or not their appointment to a committee and the business before that committee perhaps might be a bit biased. Okay? And all of the bills that were filed to do that got nowhere. Didn't even get out of committee. So let me pause here just a minute and talk about why it is so important to pay attention to the statewide races. For Lieutenant Governor, I hope you know by now that the Lieutenant Governor chooses the committee chairs for the Senate. The Lieutenant Governor actually has the power to predict the outcome of a legislative session just by the way that he or she appoints a committee chair and stacks a committee, because the Lieutenant Governor also decides what committee bills are sent to. If you've got that kind of power, then you can many times decide whether or not how you're going to kill a bill without your fingerprints even being on it. It's called deniable plausibility. Means, you know, it's somebody else's fault. Over in the House, the Speaker is the one who stacks the committees. And so what we've got to do is we've got to be very, very aware of who we send to Austin. Did you know that in this election cycle, in March of 2014, we will have the opportunity, because most of the time, the March 2014 election really decides who's going to be in statewide office. 7 of 9 statewide offices are on the ballot. Only one of those contains an incumbent, and that is for Lieutenant Governor. So we have an opportunity, and if we are very smart in the Texas Liberty Movement, we will be able to decide the direction of Texas. But it does not mean that we just wind them up and go off and do something else. Because as our founders said, if we the people don't pay attention to elected officials and hold them accountable for what they do, they're all conservatives, y'all. When they run in a primary, they're all conservative. Everybody's conservative. But you have to look at the voting records, and that's what we're going to do. The last thing here is we need to resist unconstitutional federal overreach. And that means using any means possible and testing it in the courts to exercise the 10th Amendment. And it also means to back off of those federal dollars. So let's talk a few minutes about federal funding. If you look at the history there of the amount of federal funds we have to balance our state budget, you can see here that Texas is not as independent as a lot of our leaders would have you to believe. You look there in the 2010-2011 biennium, you see that big spike there to $72.6 billion. That's because Texas took the federal stimulus funds. So then the next year, when they talked about all the cuts they made, about $12 billion of the $15 billion in cuts were because we weren't getting that one-time federal stimulus. So you have to be real careful, because sometimes our definition of a cut and their definition of a cut are not the same. But look here for the 2014-2015 biennium. We are back up to $69 billion of federal funds to balance our state budget. That is 35% of the state budget revenue. I'm going to ask you, is Texas as strong as it needs to be with that much federal money in its budget?
No.
Okay, so when you think about the way that Texas spends tax dollars, we have to think about this in a new way. It's not simply to just talk about limiting government the way we did 20 years ago, or 15 years ago, or even 10 years ago. It's more important than ever because of what we have in Washington. How many people here thinks we're going to soon figure out how we're going to settle that $17 trillion in debt? How many? Anybody think they're about ready to figure that out? Okay, so it's a really serious thing. That has a real impact on Texas. What happens if we don't get a quarter of the federal money we're used to? You think anybody would be shrieking down there in Austin? Oh yeah. What about half? What about 3/4 of that? We're talking about some people who are running around not knowing what the heck they're going to do. Well, you know, that's why I'm a person that really talks about planning. Whether I'm talking about that to the Commissioner's Court, or to state government, or at the federal level. If you don't plan in advance, if you see a big problem out there in front of you, and you just sit there and you don't do a thing to plan, when you hit the wall, you're going to hit it really hard. Why don't we have a state hiring freeze right now? Why didn't we have it back in the 82nd? Why didn't we have it in the 81st session? Do we really need all of the state positions that we have filled in state government? Probably not. But nobody's asking that question. So what does all this mean? It means that Texas has failed the test when it comes to making Texas strong, based on the issue of federal funding. Texas is 11th in the nation. We're near the top in ranking of the states that are most dependent on the federal government. 11th in the nation. And what makes that even worse is that we have not been a donor state to the federal treasury since 2008. Now let me define that. You hear a lot of officials say, well, you know what, if we don't take the federal money, somebody else is going to spend it. Besides, oh boy, we send a lot of money to the federal treasury. Well, yes, we do. The people of Texas and businesses in Texas send a lot of tax dollars to the federal treasury. But we've been taking more out of the treasury than what we've been sending in since 2008. What does that mean? That means the state of Texas, our hand is on that shovel digging the hole too. Okay? Resisting an increase in state debt. According to the Legislative Budget Board, our state debt equals $40.99 billion. It's an increase of $22.81 billion, or 125% increase in state debt over the last 10 years. 125% increase in state debt in the last 10 years. Now, the John McCain of the Texas Senate, that would be Bob Dewey. Senator Bob Dewey is the John McCain of the Texas Senate. He says, you know what, that state debt doesn't matter, because just look at all the money we got rolling in. Debt doesn't matter, because we've got money rolling in. That's why Bob Dewey needs to be retired this cycle. I'm just going to say it flat out. He needs to be retired. He is a Republican who has lost his way. In the 2010 Grant Thornton audit, which was an audit that was done of the state on the state's transportation debt, the Grant Thornton audit said that the debt path Texas is on is unsustainable. This was reported in an April 2012 Associated Press article, and it said that Texas leads the nation in road debt. So of that almost $41 billion, $31 billion of principal and interest is in transportation debt. This is completely unnecessary. We should not be in this position. The state of Texas has totally left all common sense by the way that we handle transportation. And if there's somebody in the audience from TxDOT, if you want to debate me on it sometime, you just please name the time and place. And I have a panel of people, including me, and we'll debate you on it. And we'll see what the people in Smith County think about it. Because I'm going to tell you, we can't keep doing what we're doing with transportation when transportation is a core function of state government that is not being made a priority. I'll take questions when we get done, Richard, if you don't
I
mind.
didn't understand your chart.
What about my chart?
Well, the 31 billion on road debt, is that included in the 40.99?
Yes, yes. So, another important point to note here is that the state of Texas has more debt on the books than the U.S. Postal Service. Now, that's the point I like to go into groups that are not as up to speed on the issues as you are, because they're going, what? But yes, that's true. And I make that point to show you all how far down the road we've gotten with this, with Republicans in charge. Now, am I saying this just to be mean to the GOP? No. I love Texas. I'm the only native Texan in my family. Daddy says that's why I'm so hard-headed. But I will tell you all that for the United States of America to continue the path it's on, the American people are going to need to have a place they look to that's doing it right. And that needs to be the state of Texas. So we got a little housekeeping, a little house cleaning we got to do. But I will say that we did have a win this session because the Liberty Movement in Texas stood up and said no to century bonds. You all will remember Governor Perry and some of the folks down there wanted us to go to 100-year bonds, century bonds, to fund transportation debt. And we said no. We had a press conference in the Lieutenant Governor's press room on April the 15th, and some of you guys were there. And we said, this makes no sense for the state of Texas. Well, see, by that time, they had trotted out the Dallas president of the Federal Reserve as their resource to say, this is a smart thing to do. And Miss Sassy Pants here said, you know what? The Federal Reserve has done such a jam-up good job. With the national economy, we don't think we need the Federal Reserve setting policy on debt for our state legislature. So that bill got out of here. And I think it's because we really, I mean, that was really in the media down there. Here's another warning for you. We have some trouble ahead, and it has everything to do with local debt. You know, the local debt that everybody takes on because we're so worried about children. You know, we do a lot of really bad things. We make a lot of reckless decisions in the name of children. But in some counties, they have an enormous amount of debt that their commissioners court and their city councils have racked up in transportation, ice skating rinks, arenas, entertainment venues. We haven't gotten there yet, but it's not because people aren't planning that. But of the 10 largest states in the nation, Texas local debt per person is the second highest in the nation. We are behind New York, but we are ahead of California, Illinois, and Michigan. This is the amount of just local debt per person. So you add on top of that the state debt and the federal debt, somebody's racking up a big old credit card bill. And that has to have a detrimental impact on the economy and on the future generations. It has to. Have we gotten our state's fiscal house in order? Nope. We still have too many gimmicks, duplicated effort, and spending beyond the core constitutional functions of state government. Out of about $2 billion in diversions, they cleared up about $400 million of it. And they changed the definition to avoid busting the spending cap. So, you know, people that run around this state saying we didn't bust the spending cap, well, it's because you changed the definition of it. So, you know, if the people change the definition, but I'm going to show you here a little bit that's going to clarify all of this. Session-to-session spending. If you go on the website of almost anybody running for re-election in Texas, they will talk about what a conservative budget they passed. Well, you decide for yourself how conservative it is. If you look at the supplemental appropriations that cover the planned budget shortfall, you remember after the 82nd session, remember that Texas budget boondoggle presentation that I did for you all, and I did all over the state, and I warned you that there was going to be about a $7 billion planned shortfall? Well, guess what? Whenever the comptroller said, well, guess what? We've got an $8 billion surplus. Guess where that surplus went? To pay those bills that they didn't pay the last session. Remember the counting gimmicks? Remember I told you that they pushed forward by one accounting day a payment to the foundation school program so that they wouldn't have to count it in the last biennium budget? When you do accounting gimmicks and tricks like that, you still end up having to pay the bills. So here's what they did. They had supplemental appropriations to cover that budget shortfall from the last session, plus they had new spending, which included dipping into the rainy day fund. So there was a 24% in general revenue spending, session to session spending, a 24% increase. Does that sound conservative to you? But we've made progress. Because on the Senate side, we had 4 Republican senators voted against the budget. There's enormous pressure. You have to vote for the budget, because they tell you, if you don't vote for this budget, you're telling your people in your district that you don't care about funding your public schools. Really? That's what they tell them. But in the House, we had about 31 House members that broke ranks this time for the first time and voted against the budget. Last time I think we had about 3, one of them being David Simpson. You can count on David Simpson. If there's something really rotten in Denmark in that budget, he's not voting for it. His conscience won't let him. And he also speaks out against it all during the session. So it's no surprise to anybody when he votes no if they have decided they aren't going to Listen to common sense. So just think about it, a 24% increase in spending. Now this is a chart, you can't see it, I'll tell you where to get it. If you go to Texas Public Policy Foundation's website and you look up Chuck DeVore, if you look under Chuck DeVore, he is one of their policy analysts. He used to be from the left coast. He was the California Assemblyman. You see him on Fox News. He's on Fox Business a lot. Anyway, Chuck is a brilliant man. I'm glad that he's a Californian who came to Texas because he brought the right values with him. But this is Chuck's chart. We decided in the Conservative Budget Coalition, of which the Tea Party Caucus Advisory Committee, of which I'm chair, is part of. It's Texas Public Policy Foundation, Empower Texans, and some of the conservative fiscal groups got together and said, you know what? We're going to put out a document ahead of the session saying this is what a conservative budget would look like for 2013 and going into the future. We did a lot of research and gave them some examples of some cuts and some consolidations they could do to get spending under control. So we gave them a heads up. We provided solutions. Okay, some of those they took, most of them they didn't take the time to do. Because what we have during a session is what I call the great budget cram down. They wait until the last minute and boy, everybody's in a hurry and you have to vote on this budget, you have to do it now because we're out of time. Well, there's this thing called a special session, and what I'm really urging them to do is if you get the budget crammed down from the appropriators in the House and the Finance Committee in the Senate, and it's got a bunch of stuff in there that is against everything you believe in, then y'all need to get out on the steps of the Capitol and you need to just say so. And you need to whip as many votes as you can to vote against it so that the budget fails, so we actually have to have a special session where we have 30 days where we debate how and why Texas spends money. That's the only way we're ever going to get a handle on this. The other issue that the Conservative Budget Coalition has talked about, which happens to be an idea that came from me, and that is a restructure of state government. State government needs to undergo a restructuring process, and it looks like this. We look at every department, agency, and program, and we do a core constitutional function test on it. If this department, agency, or program is not a core constitutional function of Texas state government, we shouldn't be doing it. It should be put over here to the side to be eliminated. And then after that, after we've done all that house cleaning, which would take quite a bit of time, then what we need to do is we need to see then of what we have left, what can be consolidated. There are numerous departments, agencies, and programs that are under the big core constitutional function headings that can be consolidated to do what? To save you money, so that we don't have a 24% increase in spending. So I talk about the state's core constitutional functions. Here they are. Public education is a core constitutional function of state government. Now, you may disagree with that. I had a man that wanted to debate that with me. I think it was in Odessa. And I said, sir, I understand that education is the God-given responsibility of a parent to a child. I get all of that. But the public education has been around in the United States for a long time. So my goal is not to try to untangle something that was done centuries ago. My job is to try to get government limited. And so my goal is to remind people that public education is not a core constitutional function of the federal government. There is nowhere in the Constitution can you find education. So the Department of Education should be eliminated. Another core function of state government is transportation. The justice system of criminal and civil courts, which includes your law enforcement and your corrections system of state prisons. Management of natural resources. Let me pause here a minute to give you an example of where we need some consolidation. Did you know the state of Texas has at least 38 different departments, agencies, and programs that manage natural resources in the state of Texas? And if you vote for Prop 6 and it goes through, bingo, you got another one. So when I had my heated debate with Chairman Ritter from the Natural Resources Committee from the House, and I asked basic questions. For example, I'm sitting here with the Legislative Budget Board's fiscal note. You know, every bill has a fiscal note. You know what that is? That's a report that tells the legislators how much this piece of legislation is going to cost the people of Texas. It's an analysis on how much it's going to cost us to do this particular thing. That's a reasonable expectation, don't you think? So when I'm looking at the fiscal note on a bill, and I ask the chairman, why in the world do we have 38 different departments, agencies, and programs that your committee is supposed to be overseeing in the first place? Why are we adding more people? Why am I looking at a fiscal note that says that this thing you're going to do with water is going to add 32 more people? You know what his response to me was? Well, JoAnn, you know, the LBB gets carried away with, you know, it probably won't be 32. I went, no, in my experience, it'll probably be 64. So, you know, this is the kind of thing that we have going on down there. Why didn't somebody say, isn't there a place that we can merge these new responsibilities into something that we've already got? Just seems common sense to me. So the last two core functions of state government, state emergency services, and because we took the first dollar of Medicaid, it is the administration of Health and Human Services and Medicaid in the state of Texas. Now I'm going to tell you, I'm going to say right here and now, I have a lot of differing opinions and a lot of beefs with our statewide leadership. But it was the right thing to do not to expand Medicaid.